Coming up on Lawmakers, the House votes to allow the seizure of vehicles driven by illegal immigrants involved in traffic accidents. Democrats outline their opposition to current tax proposal. And the Senate Judiciary Committee holds hearings to get Metro Atlanta on track with maglev and commuter rail. Those stories and more are coming up next.
This is Lawmakers, your source for all the news from under the Gold Dome. Here are your anchors, and Wandy Lawson and David Zelski.
Good evening, everyone. Also on Lawmakers, the House votes to allow the purchase of wine in Georgia from internet vendors, and the Senate passes a bill to exempt commercial car washes from the watering ban.
But first, our top story tonight. Police may be able to impound the cars of illegal immigrants if they're involved in traffic accidents. The State House today passes a measure to seize the cars of illegal immigrants who are involved in an accident or who are pulled over for a traffic violation. Lawmaker Sandra Parrish now joins us live with more. Sandra.
In Wyoming, Representative James Mills sponsored House Bill 978 after he says he got complaints from his constituents who had been hit by illegal immigrants. But opponents of the measure say it raises a host of constitutional issues.
And if we can stop and take some of these people off the roads, then we're going to be helping legal citizens, and that's what this bill attempts to do.
Representative James Mills says that the federal government won't do something about illegal immigration. It's up to the state to protect its citizens.
You got a legal Georgia citizen who's abiding by the law, who has his insurance premium go up because he has to file on his own insurance premium, and that's if he's able to file. I could cite you story after story after story of people who have been killed, their lives have been taken.
The measure would allow police to seize the vehicles of illegal immigrants either pulled over for a traffic violation or involved in a traffic accident. In that case, a judge could order the vehicle be sold to pay for restitution.
The major concern, anyone who has familiarity with Fourth Amendment rights under not only the U.S. but the state constitution, is we have certain protections against unlawful search and seizures, and you have to have something called probable cause. There's no requirement for probable cause as far as I read this bill. I think there's some constitutional violations. I think this bill will, should it become law, would face a serious and most likely successful challenge on the basis of the Fourth Amendment.
Does this bill actually lead to profiling, and would it determine that more profiling may be determined in this area?
I think people could be pulled over because they look like they might not be U.S. citizens. And that could be another basis for a lawsuit that our constituents, tax-paying citizens, would have to fund.
We think this is definitely part of a calculated legislative anti-immigrant agenda, and we will continue to fight it. There's constitutional problems with the bills and with this bill, specifically on the honorable representatives who spoke about the bill, articulated those problems very well, and we will continue to oppose this bill throughout the legislative process. And if it does pass, we think it's a really bad measure, we will explore all legal options as well.
A move to table the bill failed today. The measure passed with a vote of 104 to 51 and now goes to the Senate. Reporting live, I'm Sandra Parrish for Lawmakers.
Thanks so much, Sandra.
Even though the statewide water plan was signed by Governor Perdue earlier this session, the task of finding solutions continue. There's currently a resolution in U.S. Congress which could alter water allocation and laws. Senator Lee Hawkins explains the resolution that's in Washington.
This resolution says, whereas the legislation would allow states suffering from droughts to be exempt temporarily from Endangered Species Act, which in Georgia is threatening our low water supply by taking large amounts of water from North Georgia and sending it downstream to protect mussels and sturgeons in Florida. And whereas U.S. House Resolution 3847 would amend the Endangered Species Act of 1973 to allow a state to be exempt from the act when the Secretary of the Army or a governor declares drought conditions are threatening the health, safety, and welfare of residents in the region served by a river basin managed by the federal government. This is not a law, but this is an effort to continually remind the bureaucracy in Washington that they are responsible, we are the citizens, and we're the reason that they're there.
A little bit later, Senator John Bullock took the well to introduce SB 466. This gives an option for certain car wash facilities to be exempt from current water restrictions.
Car washes have to be connected to a municipal or county sewer system, or they have to have recycling capabilities, and it puts in place to where the Department of Natural Resource Board would have to establish rules and regulations. There would be a fee for a permit to operate those facilities, and the rules and regs would be adopted by the Department of Natural Resource Board.
Senator Chip Rogers explains a successful amendment which includes certain exemptions for swimming pools.
Swimming pools would be exempt if maintaining the swimming, or the failure to maintain the swimming pool would create a health or safety hazard. And as we heard in testimony before the Natural Resources Committee, that oftentimes the swimming pools get below the skimmer, they do create a significant health problem.
Now again, Senate Bill 466 passed by a vote of 49-1 with the Rogers Amendment and now goes to the House.
Democratic House and Senate members voiced their opposition this afternoon to Republican tax proposals currently in the House Rules Committee. Lawmakers Bridget Snapp now joins us live with more. Bridget.
In Wandy, House Speaker Glenn Richardson's tax reform proposals, House Bill 979 and House Resolution 1246 would eliminate ad valorem property taxes in favor of an expanded statewide sales tax. Democrats warn this plan puts 175 new taxes on Georgia citizens, including one on groceries.
But we cannot and will not support tax reform that undermines education, that breaks cities and counties, and increases taxes on working families and the elderly in Georgia. The Republican tax plan puts 175, really more than 175 new taxes on Georgians.
And what are those taxes? If you go to the barber shop or the beauty salon, you will be taxed.
All right.
If you go to a lawyer to have a will done, you will be taxed. If you take your car to an auto shop, you will be taxed. If you have death in your family,
that's right,
the funeral service and even the digging of the grave will be taxed. And when you go to get your taxes done, guess what? You will be taxed.
We believe the Republican tax plan boils down to simply this. You want to tax our groceries and starve our schools. What's wrong with this plan? Let's take a closer look. Despite creating all of these new taxes, the Republican tax plan will not see any new education funding for Georgia. Too many students will still be learning in overcrowded schools and portable trailers.
Hopefully the bill will never get out of the House, but in the event that it should, by some chance, unforeseen, get out of the House, we will surely kill it in the Senate.
After the press conference, Decatur City Mayor Bill Floyd explained why he sides with the Democrats on this one.
I applaud the Democrats for being willing to stand up against the Speaker's tax plan. It's probably the greatest single attack on local government control that I can remember. I've been on the council in Decatur. I'm in my 17th year there. It takes our responsibility to our local constituents away from us, consolidates them down here, removes tools that we use to fund our local services, and consolidates them down here.
Republican House members responded to the Democratic press conference in a statement released this afternoon, referring to the fact that their tax proposal requires a vote of the citizens because it is in the form of a constitutional amendment. Majority Leader Jerry Keene said the following: Georgians deserve the chance to have their voice heard on the important issue of reforming our tax system. The Democrats have locked down today to deny Georgians that chance. And I think all of us who support meaningful tax reform and significant tax cuts are disappointed. Rather than come to the table and work with us, they have come together in solid opposition to a $422 million tax cut that is not something Georgians will soon forget. Reporting live, I'm Bridget Snapp for Lawmakers.
Thank you so very much, Bridget. Well, Georgia wine lovers are one step closer to legally making their purchases online. Although House Bill 1061 allows wine shipments from throughout the country, Representative Ron Stevens says the measure will ultimately benefit Georgia's small wineries.
It allows Georgians to order wine and have it shipped directly to them. It allows for a 21-year-old to order up to 12 cases per year from that manufacturer, from that winery. It provides for age verification Some 37 states now allow direct shipping of wine dating back to 1980, so we're not breaking new ground here.
HB 1061 passed 126-8 and moves to the Senate. A companion measure allowing tastings at farm wineries also cleared the House.
On the passage of House Bill 393, the yeas 116, the nays 3. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed.
It controls access to child pornographic images by a court and limits that access to relevant and necessary parties in civil litigation, criminal litigation, and open records requests.
HB 1020, bringing the state in line with the federal Adam Walsh Child Protection and Safety Act, had no opposition and goes to the Senate. The same could not be said of an attempt to require many boat owners to title their vessels.
Georgia is one of only 13 states that do not require titling of boats. Georgia leads the nation in stolen boats, and most major thefts are dealing with watercraft occur with personal watercraft.
I represent Hart County and a lot of that area where we have a lot of lakes in this state. Got a lot of people who own boats. And I have never to this day ever heard of a problem from law enforcement or the boat owners about this.
A motion to send HB 1000 back to the Rules Committee was successful.
It's not as simple as it seems.
As was an effort to kill legislation requiring cemetery owners to provide maps of the plots they sell.
This bill, in fact, is going to cause undue burden to municipalities and small business owners.
This particular piece of legislation was one in which a family had purchased a piece of purchased a lot in the cemetery, and at the end of the funeral, after everyone had left, one family stayed behind. And the grave diggers began to move the casket to another location, and the family member said, "Why are you moving the casket?" And they said, "Because there's someone already in this grave site, and we don't know who it is."
The battle over HB 278 led one of the measure's sponsors, funeral director Chuck Sims, to try to commit the bill to rules. And following that failed attempt, the bill failed to garner a majority of votes. But HB 278 may not be dead. Representative Thomas says she'll ask the House to reconsider its action tomorrow. On a lighter note, passage of a measure allowing police from the Carolinas, Florida, Alabama, and Tennessee to pursue suspects into Georgia was preceded by some good-natured ribbing about the state's attempt to reclaim a portion of southern Tennessee.
What if the pursuit starts just below the 35th parallel? Would somebody still need to request permission?
No. Good answer. Representative Bearden says he has a question.
Was this include pursuits from Texarkana?
If the sheriff from Texas comes this way, he would not be allowed to enter this state. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield the will.
Good decision.
And House Bill 983 passed 130-1. It moves over to the Senate. The House also approved a measure providing a $2,000 tax credit to families who adopt foster children. House Bill 1159 passed 127-1 and goes before the Senate.
Back to the Senate, where they passed legislation today which increases the number of people who can live in a place called a host home. Senator Seth Harp explains Senate Bill 469.
What we have found is that people with developmental disabilities, through their process of education, will sometimes develop very close friendships. And those friends would be allowed to have and stay and reside in these homes with a maximum of 2 folks. They both have to be developmentally disabled, and they would be allowed to be in the home. Why do we need these? Frequently, we're talking about children that may be born with Downs or some other syndrome or some other problem, and their parents are aging, and their parents pass away. These children, these adults now, have no place to go. This is a far better setting than putting them into a long-term care facility. It's a home-type environment, and they're allowed to stay in this home. But this increases the number of patients that can stay in the home from 1 to 2, and it still is a host home.
Senator Cecil Staton then took the well to explain some legislation that fights sexual predators on the internet and gives parents a few extra tools to protect their children.
It will increase the tools available for parents as they try to monitor websites that perhaps they would not choose for their children to go to. It will also help them to track the comings and goings of their children on the internet. The providers have agreed to provide this tool or to make this tool available to parents. The second thing this bill does is to help us educate our children. We're calling upon our teachers and school boards and districts to help us by offering an a component within their curriculum beginning at grades 3 that will help educate our children with respect to the dangers of the internet and internet safety. A third thing that this bill would accomplish is to increase post-conviction controls on convicted sex offenders. This legislation sets some options for judges, guidelines that would allow the state to monitor the online activities of convicted child predators.
Now, Senator Staten's SB 474 and the Host Home Bill, SB 469, both passed unanimously and now go over to the House. Senate President Pro Tem Eric Johnson took a point of personal privilege this morning to commend the Georgia Trial Lawyers Association. They have spoken out against an out-of-state law firm's newspaper ad in reaction to the Savannah sugar refinery disaster.
A copy of a newspaper ad placed by the Georgia Trial Lawyers Association in the Savannah paper in response to 3 or 4 days of full-page ads from a Texas trial lawyer in Savannah trying to capitalize on the Dixie Crystal explosion. And I wanted to commend the Georgia trial lawyers for going after some of those that brings a bad reputation on trial lawyers who are generally good people trying to do the right thing for the right reason. So, you know, sometimes when we've been crossways with the Georgia Trial Lawyers Association, I wanted to take an opportunity to come down here and commend them for these actions and show our appreciation to them.
Governor Perdue unveiled more of his plan to help the Clayton County school system avoid losing its accreditation this fall. The legislation would give residents the power to vote in a special election to remove the entire school board in a district that loses its accreditation. Current law requires the signatures of 30% of those registered to vote at the time the board is elected in order to remove that body. The governor is also appointed 2 special liaisons from the State Board of Education to assist Clayton County and has enlisted the help of several state agencies to audit and supervise the situation.
A joint House Transportation Committee heard about a couple of rail transit options for the future. An option known as the Brain Train, which treks from Atlanta to Athens, and the high-speed maglev. This would connect the Atlanta and Chattanooga airports.
It is the first really revolutionary transportation project that we've seen in probably about 100 years or so.
A maglev, or magnetically levitating train, is a form of transportation that suspends, guides, and propels vehicles using electromagnetic force. This project has been operating in Shanghai, China since 2004 and is actually turning a profit. 65% of the cost of this North Georgia maglev would be infrastructure and right-of-way, and the project in total is estimated at $4.8 billion. If constructed, the maglev would shoot a passenger from Chattanooga to the Atlanta airport in 47 minutes, reaching speeds up to 300 miles an hour. The other option they heard about today was the Brain Train. This would be more of a stop-and-go transit rail operation, shuttling through towns in between Atlanta and Athens, Georgia. Senate Transportation Committee member Doug Stoner discussed the rail prospects.
We're competing with New York, Chicago, L.A., London, Tokyo. That's who our competition is. And unfortunately, this is a missing piece of our network. And I've heard some folks say, I don't know if Jim Wooten was here, but my neighbor, actually Jim's my neighbor, has said that, railroad technology is 19th century technology, but if I remember correctly, so is the automobile.
Senator Jeff Chapman has lost his bid to get 3 Jekyll Island bills to the Senate floor after all 3 bills were defeated today in the Senate committee. Lawmakers Andy Dixon has more on that meeting.
The Senate Economic Development Committee meeting began with Senator Chip Pearson laying some ground rules.
Senator, you're going to have a total of 20 minutes, which can be taken up entirely of your time, or you can have 2 other folks speak on behalf of your bills.
Jekyll Island, located in the southeast corner of the state, is known as Georgia's Jewel for its scenic natural beauty. But it is also the subject of a battle that pits the Jekyll Island State Park Authority against Senator Chapman, who wants to preserve Jekyll as an affordable public park site. That clash heated up this week when Senator Chapman accused the authority of misrepresenting visitor numbers and financial information, including $11 million in unaccounted for funds. The drama played out in this committee meeting where Chapman defended his plan against attack from the authority.
Jekyll needs to be rebuilt, not destroyed, not expanded. It needs to be first rebuilt. The reason visitation has dropped off in the degree that it has is because people do not like to stay in a nasty, unkept hotel, and everybody pretty much understands that. But what they do like about Jekyll Island is everything else it has to offer.
In the end, his attempts proved unsuccessful, and all three of Chapman's bills were overwhelmed by opposition. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Andy Dixon.
A bill that seeks to restore fairness in car repossessions was introduced in the House yesterday. Representative Rich Golick sponsors the bill.
House Bill 1344 is a consumer protection bill. What this bill provides for is that when a car is repossessed pursuant to a title pawnbroker transaction, if the car is repossessed, the proceeds of that sale should, of course, make the pawnbroker whole, have them get their money back that they're owed, plus any fees that they're owed. But if there's any profit coming from that transaction, that ought to go back to the consumer as opposed to going into the pocket of the pawnbroker. At this point, when you have a transaction such as that, we want people to be made whole. If somebody's making a loan to somebody else, we want them to be paid back. There's no problem. If there are any fees, they should be paid back. But there ought not be unjust enrichment. The only potential problem is if there's a resistance from the pawnbroker industry that do these car title loans. I think it would behoove them to embrace this bill as a good pro-consumer piece of legislation. If they're not engaging in this conduct right now, they ought not be fearful of legislation.
Now, House Bill 1344 has been assigned to the House Banks and Banking Committee. We will continue to follow this measure as it makes its way through the legislative process.
The Georgia Campaign for Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention, otherwise known as GCAP, announced its legislative agenda at a reception last night. At the top of the agenda, House Bill 901, the Parent Protection Act, which would give Georgia parents 24 hours of job-protected leave per year to attend school events and medical appointments. Lawmakers Keosha Jackson has more.
Research shows that young people who have parents who are actively engaged in their schooling are much less likely to engage in risky behaviors that can lead to a teen pregnancy. So we support the state's efforts to encourage parents to be involved in their child's lives at school, with going to medical appointments and so forth. And we know that that will help create an environment where young people will be more likely to avoid risky behaviors that could lead to a teen pregnancy. The proposed fiscal year 2009 budget eliminates over $29 million in child care service dollars. These subsidies currently pay for approximately 8,000 after-school and child care slots. Without these subsidies, many low-income families will not be able to afford quality child care and after-school care, and their children will be denied a safe place to go while their parents are at work. Advocates are asking that these funds be restored.
From 1991 to 2005, teen pregnancy rates declined 30%. GCAP President Michelle Ozumba says the organization is working to continue the decline.
15 by 15 is a new goal for Georgia. We worked with the State Department of Human Resources to look at the numbers and look at what we could possibly achieve going forward, and we said we could achieve another 15% decline in teenage pregnancies in Georgia by the year 2015. So 15 by 15.
The latest teen pregnancy data from 2006 shows a 3% increase in teen pregnancy in the state, but GCAP says they believe this is just a blip and they hope to see the numbers decline as they have in previous years. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Keosha Jackson.
Members of the Atlanta Falcons Youth Foundation and a few of these players came to Washington Street today to kick off a campaign to support better health programs in Georgia's public schools. Lawmakers Minu Hosseini kicks off the story.
Take a deep breath. Come on, everyone, take a deep breath. And scream, healthy kids. 1, 2, 3. Healthy kids! You know, that was great, but we gotta reach all the way inside the Gold Dome. 1, 2, 3. Healthy kids! And one more time for all of Georgia. 1, 2, 3. Healthy kids!
The Atlanta Falcons joined the Georgia Coalition for Physical Activity and Nutrition in support of Senate Bill 506, which addresses childhood obesity in Georgia's public schools.
Not only is the Legislative Fitness Challenge a great way for us to stay in shape, but it's a great beginning to moving Senate Bill 506 into law and to making sure that the students in our schools in Georgia are as healthy as they can be.
At a luncheon later today, GPAN members will ask legislators to wear a pedometer for the next 30 days, the legislative challenge. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Minu Hosseini.
Sisters of Determination, a gospel group from Macon, brought down the house in the north wing of the Capitol today. Caroline Yaga tunes us in.
He'll walk you into the light. Know that everything will be okay. Everything will be alright.
Some of the girls you see around me are actually pages of the Senate. They were invited by Senator Robert Brown today to sing. They clearly struck a chord with him.
I need you, Lord. Will you help me? I need you, Lord. Come set me free. Walk at the top of my athlete. Living like a lot of fire. You could buy a book. To be I-B-A-L-E. Many people get killed. Pick it up and maybe you can learn to sing God. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
The Sisters of Determination, ages 10 to 17, have been singing for 3 years, and this is their first time singing at the Capitol. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Caroline Yaga.
Legislation that helps investigators when it comes to arson and forest fires passed the Senate earlier this week. Senator Russ Tolleson explains Senate Bill 400.
What happens when these fires start, then you have a lot of arsons going out there trying to create more fires and make it worse. This bill actually does two things. First off, the investigators for Georgia Forestry already have arrest powers, but the thing that they don't have is the ability just to issue a citation. So if there's some minor infraction and they catch somebody for it, they literally have to arrest you. So what the first section of this bill does is give the ability for them to give a citation, and then after the third citation, then they would arrest you after that. So that gives them a little more flexibility in dealing with some minor issues than having to just arrest people.
Now, there was a second part to this bill that sets out 3 discipline levels of arson. Senate Bill 400 passed unanimously and went over to the House. 2008 marks the 60th anniversary of the modern state of Israel. Yesterday, Senator Judson Hill spoke at the rostrum to honor some special guests.
It's our honor today to recognize the 60th anniversary of the founding of the modern day of Israel, and we're pleased to have members of the Atlanta Jewish Federation, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, the Anti-Defamation League, the Jewish National Fund, and the American Jewish Committee, and others to stand here with us to recognize such a great country and the foundation of a strong relationship. You know, the Bible tells us that those people who stand with Israel will be blessed, and those who stand against Israel will be cursed, and we're happy to be some of those who stand strongly with you.
Coming up tomorrow on Lawmakers, it's the end of another legislative week, and we'll take a look back with Tom Crawford of CapitolImpact.com. That's tomorrow night at 7 on Lawmakers. You can also keep up with all the action under the Gold Dome daily on your local GPB radio station during Morning Edition, All Things Considered, and evenings at 6 p.m. on Georgia Gazette. Now, stay tuned for Prep Sports Plus on GPB.
And that's our broadcast for the 25th Legislative Day. I'm Wendy Lawson.
And I'm David Zelski. Have a good night.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.